Hey folks, so I put out an announcement about this. I'm not sure if everybody saw it, but I've decided that I'm going to do the first part of this speedrun, and by first part I mean the buying the items part, in a separate video, which is this video. Now, I am going to be streaming the leveling of this character right here, this Nightborn Death Knight, on stream in about like 15 minutes or so from the time of posting. I don't know how long it's going to be, but it's going to be at 11 a.m. EST on Saturday morning, which is around the time when this video is coming out. So I'm going to be leveling this character live on stream. It won the poll. I put up a poll for Tauren Protection Paladin or Nightborn Blood DK, and this won with 57% of the votes compared to Tauren Paladin's 43%. Now, I will still be doing a Tauren Paladin run, but that will probably be off stream, and I'll be doing it at some point in the future, because I have a lot of other things I need to do. I can only focus on one character at a time, but don't worry, if you were excited for a Tauren Protection Paladin, that will come. In fact, I already have it, right here. It's already level 50, it's a character I've had for quite a while, so the run will be purely just 50 to 60. I'll probably do some Threads of Fate testing when I level this character. You don't need another 10 to 50 run, there's been a million of those on my channel already, so we're going to focus more on the important stuff, 50 to 60. But for this character, I'm going to be doing 10 to 50 probably on the first stream, and 50 to 60 on the second stream. We'll see exactly how I decide to split it. I might go a bit more if the stream is still short, if I end up being really fast. We'll play it by ear, really. But I've decided that I want to do the purchasing of the consumables first, because this will be a budget speedrun where I only have 5k with which I need to purchase as many useful consumables as possible. And I felt like if I did that on stream, it would kind of skew the results, because I might get like items sniped out from under me and stuff. So by recording this now, I can accurately prepare all of the items that I need for the run without having to worry about interference from streaming. And then once the stream starts, we just hop in right where I left off. I can actually just start leveling instead of having downtime where I'm, buying stuff off the auction house. I think it's just a win-win scenario. So I'm going to hop in here, and then I will mail over gold and get started with the purchasing. Alright, so I mailed over gold. I've hopped onto this character. Obviously, my UI is completely fucked, so I'm going to need to make some quick changes to that. I'm just going to select blood over here. That's what I'll be leveling as. That was the option on the poll. The reason I'm doing blood specifically is because I have talked at length about how much I absolutely despise blood DK. So it should be fun. I have a lot to say about blood DK. I know people are probably going to hear me say that I despise it and be like, what? What do you mean? Blood's so good right now, and it's a very mixed thing. I'm not going to talk in length about that. I'm sure I'm going to go into a long tangent about that later on. Alright, so I'm just going to let the timer tick up. I forgot to start it for the beginning of the run, but I mean, that amounts to effectively like 1 minute. So I'll let it tick up to 1 minute. While I do that, I'll add my heirlooms, because this is normally something that I would do ahead of time. So it kind of balances out in the long run. You know what? Why not? I earned that Hellscream's Decapitator. In fact, I earned that Hellscream's Decapitator on a Blood Death Knight way back when. I figure if I'm gonna use some special item, it might as well be that one. So I've decided to go with one of my favorite sets, which is the Siege of Orgrimmar Warrior set. I don't know why, I just really love the color scheme on this. It's just one of my all-time favorite plate sets. So that's what I'll be using. Now, luckily that did not really cost anything at all, so I can go ahead and gather my gold from the mailbox. Now, I did say I'm going with a 5k budget, but in case you did not watch the first speedrun, what we're doing for these is I'm doing a 5k consumable budget and then 5k for flying specifically. So I did a poll before the first budget speedrun. Vast majority of people wanted me to not include flying as part of the 5k because they thought that just wouldn't be interesting. I agree with that. So the total amount is 10k, and I can only spend 5k of that on consumables. Now, what am I going to buy? So I would say if you're not a Death Knight, one thing that is probably pretty worth it would be Elemental Force while leveling at low levels. So this is pretty cheap, and this thing, especially at really low levels, is insanely good. Now, I'm going to be able to get Rune of the Fallen Crusader, which is pretty good. Honestly, because of Rune Forging, I don't think it's worth it for Death Knights. There is an argument to be made for Elemental Force, even on a Death Knight. I think you could argue that the proc is just really, really good. Maybe, like, you use that for the start and then swap to Fallen Crusader later on. But in terms of cost effectiveness, a free Rune Forging enchant is always just going to be a better option. Now, the biggest thing that I would want to get is also bags, but as most allied races or Death Knights, you start off with a few beginner bags, so I might still want to get a few 30 slots, but now that is lower on my priority list because of that. So, first thing I want to make sure I get, Bear Tartar. I'm just going to get 5 of these. They're dirt cheap. There's no reason not to have Bear Tartar. It's by far the best food buff. I can't use it until level 40, but it's going to be very, very, very useful at that point. Now, minor speed. This is another really big one. So, wow. Somebody gouged the price. At least I can't claim that this is due to people stream sniping me, because this is pre-recorded. But this is not the normal price. I'm usually able to get these for a few hundred golds each. Worst case scenario, just learn enchanting on your own. Make your own enchant boots minor speed. This is, I wouldn't say it's a must-have, but it is a very, very, very important item to get. So another thing at low levels, Swiftness Pot. These are absolutely dirt cheap because they're rewards from completing Battlegrounds, so everybody has a million of them. I would go ahead and say buy 40. Like, that's how cheap it is. 40 gold for this amount of utility over the course of your run, absolutely massive, definitely worth it. Mount equipment, I don't think I'm going to get, but I'll check the price. Hoof plate. Oh, right. So this is one of those things where, as you can see, this is pretty good. I would, if I was preparing for like a major actual speedrun, I would use this, but this would be my entire budget. I'm not going to spend my entire budget on just a 20% speed increase, so, oh well, right? But this is a very good item. I would recommend getting this while leveling if you want to invest a bit more gold. The nice thing about this is obviously it continues working at max level. Now, this is only if you're playing a tank. If you are not playing a tank, by far the better option would be this thing. Comfortable Rider's Barding, which prevents you from being dazed. Now, tanks are already immune to being dazed. This will do nothing for me. It's also much cheaper, as you can see. But if you already have immune to daze, then light step hoof plates are just a better option. Now, next up, I'm going to get what I believe to be pretty much the most essential item for leveling, Goblin Gliders. And I'm just going to go ahead and get 10 of them. You know what? Actually, I'm just going to get 20. At this point, I have a lot of gold still remaining. So 20 Goblin Gliders, can't really go wrong with that. That should keep me covered for the entire run. Goblin Gliders, I mean, I think most people know about them by now, but what can I say about them that hasn't been said already? They're like a must-have item. They save so much time, they're super cheap, there's no reason to not prepare a bunch of these for your speedruns. And then, of course, we have gun shoes. Now, gun shoes, as you can see, are a bit more on the pricey side. I still think they're worth it. So, even within a budget speedrun, I would absolutely still recommend picking up a few gun shoes. If you use them properly, and I'm going to try to show the best uses, they're just a good investment, really. There's nothing else to it. So, I'm going to go ahead and buy... Honestly, I'm going to get 10. This is usually a bit more expensive. I've seen them go up to like 300 something gold. In that case, maybe I'd be a bit cheaper. But with that price, I think I can afford 10. Should be fine. So, I kind of already have pretty good consumables. Like, I have Swiftness Potions, I have Bear Tartar, that's really the main thing that you need. A lot of low-level consumables, there's, like, nothing super important that I would really need to get. I guess once I start leveling up, there are certain things that I can keep in mind. I think it's Undertow, right? Yeah, that's the strength one. So, these prices are obviously very high. If you have a lot of BFA mats and you've leveled up your BFA alchemy, this can be pretty good. I would say that around level 40, that's where the scaling on mobs starts to get a bit more challenging. That's where you want to start prepping consumables, but it's not really that big of a deal. You don't need to worry about it. Now, I do have 2 sockets on my weapon. So what I think I'm going to do is get 2 gems. Yeah, why not? So I'm going to go ahead, grab a crit gem. I'm going to go for, like, the cheapest crit gem that I can find. Now, the thing about this is if I were to take this item and put it on my main, and then buy the crit gems on my main, I could actually get these socketed and have them scale down even on this character. But I wouldn't be able to socket, like, these gems, despite their cheap price, into that item. So I'm going to buy 2 of these Deadly Lava Lazuli. I can't use it right now, but when I eventually can use it, it'll just be pretty nice to have. I'm even going to go ahead and buy 2 Shadowlands gems. Might as well. Not going to use them for super long, but they're pretty good. And then I'm just going to buy 2 of these. So now I only have 800 gold left in my budget. And now, with the remaining 800 gold, I don't know if I want to use all of it. I want to keep at least, like, 200 gold as, like, spending money, just in case. I don't know, like, maybe if I see something on the auction house, I could be like, oh, yeah, I'll grab that. Now, one thing I do want to highlight, Cracked Radnax Control Gem. I've talked about this in many runs in the past. Unfortunately, for some reason, the tooltip isn't even updated, but when you actually try to use this, like if this was in my bags, it would tell me that it requires level 45 to use. It's unfortunately an item that was really, really useful in the early speedruns, and is now no longer usable. In fact, I would argue that a change like this almost invalidates all of the previous speedruns, but I don't really think speedrun.com is going to do that, so oh well. It is what it is. But, I mean, 9.1.5 is coming around the corner. Once that happens, we'll just get a new category anyway. So, Cracked Radnax Control Gem, may it rest in peace. It is no longer useful for speedrunning at all. It's still a fun item, though. I would still like to use it just every once in a while for fun. Now, the last thing that I think I'll probably buy is bags. Now, because I start off with a few bags, it's not a big concern. But, I mean, I have gold left over. Figure, why not? Can get a few deep sea bags. Sometimes shrouded cloth bags might be more valuable, or less valuable in terms of their sell price. So you might want to get those. But because I still have leftover golds, I can go ahead and buy those, and that's just going to make my life easier. And honestly, that's it. I'm going to buy more stuff, of course, as I level up. As I start to get more gold through actually doing the quests, I'm going to begin to invest more money into maybe like a consumable item or the Shadowlands. Once I get there, there's a few things I'm going to prepare for the Maw, because at this point I can't skip it. This is not PTR. I still have to do the Maw, and there's a few tricks that obviously I use to save time there. But for now, this is honestly all I need. I'm going to use this as I level up further. I'm going to use Bear Tartar when I hit 40. I have a few places along the route where I'm going to use Gunshoes, Goblin Gliders, same thing. Swiftness Potions are just really nice to have. There's a lot of other things that I could potentially buy. So I have my actual, like, world record speedrun preparation list, right? And to basically explain what I haven't included here, I'll stop the timer because that's basically the end of me actually buying the items, but I do want to go into detail here. So, what am I missing? Well, I'm missing damage potions, flasks, and buff food for all levels. So if you watch my speedruns, you'll notice that I have food prepared for basically every level bracket. Like, I have level 17 food, I have level 20-something food, level 30 food, then I swap to Bear Tartar. Now, none of those food items are actually really that efficient. They save time, obviously, but they save maybe seconds over the course of the run. It's very minor optimization. And those food items are extremely expensive. Bear Tartare saves by far the most amount of time, because you can clearly see the time that it's saving you in terms of the movement speed increase. You're getting from mob to mob faster. It's just really nice. And it's also the cheapest of any of the food items that I buy over the course of the speedrun. So this is absolutely worth it. All of the other food items are not. It's the same thing kind of with the damage potions and the flasks. Now, those, if you can craft them on your own, I would say are probably worth it. They don't take long at all to make. Usually, if you buy the raw materials, they're not super expensive, and then you can make them in bulk and just use them as you level up. And I would say you don't need flasks for lower levels. So you'll see me flask. I have flasks from original vanilla, flasks from like BC and stuff that I constantly use and interchange as I level up to constantly have the most up-to-date, most powerful flask buff active. This is not needed. I would say you only really need to start like flasking to get efficient time saves after like late 30s and level 40s. At that point, mobs will take slightly longer to kill. Having a flask up for pretty much all content will save you a decent bit of time. We're still talking like seconds to maybe a minute or two over the course of a run, but that is a decent time save, I would say. Damage potions on a big like quest mob that you have to kill, like burn down. If you pop a potion, you can kill it within your cooldowns. That saves like a decent amount per potion used, and those are pretty cheap, not too hard to make. Healing potions are kind of like an oh shit button, right? They're not really going to save you time, but they're sort of an emergency thing that you can press if you overpull and you're about to die. And if you died, you would lose a ton of time, so by pressing a healing potion, you're just saving yourself, and you're not taking that time loss, right? But they're not like an essential thing. I still prepare them. The same thing with Augment Runes. Obviously, Augment Runes are a very minor buff that shaves off seconds off the entire run. Not worth it. Already went over mount equipment. And then the big one that I've talked about before is crafted gear. So I get crafted trinkets, the stat sticks from WoD. I get crafted rings. I get level 23, 32, and 41 gear. Sometimes I also get a few pieces of gear for like level 45, but not always. But those are the three brackets, 23, 32, 41, where I like to replace my gear. I found that at those levels exactly, the stats bump up by like a decent amount. So that's like my breakpoint for when I start to replace all my gear. I get a full set for each of those three levels. I obviously enchant my heirlooms. That can be kind of expensive, but I will say that enchanted heirlooms can be worth it in many ways, because once I apply an enchant to an heirloom, like if I wanted, I already have a full set of all of these heirlooms completely enchanted. A good one is Mark of the Hidden Satyr. So the best bang for your buck enchant you could get would be Mark of the Hidden Satyr on your Minari Training Amulet. Because Mark of the Hidden Satyr is really, really powerful, especially at low levels. It's kind of like Elemental Force. And because Minari Training Amulet is the neck that you're going to use on every single one of your characters, it's just really good value. You buy one enchant, and then you can use it on every character you level until the end of time. So a lot of those enchants, you don't want to look at it as this is the price I'm paying per character. It's kind of a permanent investment. It goes hand in hand with heirlooms. You can just reuse those same sets. Now, for the purpose of this speedrun, I would be including enchants within the cost, within that budget. But just to be clear, I have already made that investment, and if I were to mail over those heirlooms now, I would be basically spending zero money and still, getting a benefit out of those enchants. It's something to consider. It's not a massive time save, but it is definitely very valuable if you're like me and you plan to level a million different characters over the course of your time playing WoW. The ones that aren't necessarily worth it are enchants for your other items. The only one that I would say is kind of worth it is, like I said, Enchant Boots Minor Speed. A 10% speed increase, especially at low levels, can be very, very, very good. That will save a decent amount of time, I guess, over the course of a run. But it's not worth the whatever price was on the auction house, 8,500 gold. I usually pay a few hundred gold for that. And at a few hundred gold, having a few enchant boots minor speed stuff for leveling is pretty good. Glove enchants, though, bracer enchants, that stuff probably isn't worth it. You don't need to invest in it. And then there's like very niche things. So I also have XA1000 surface skimmers. There's a few places within the Horde and Alliance route where you can use these, but they save very minimal amounts of time. Maybe about like a minute or two over the course of an entire speedrun. For an actual world record speedrun, they are still a significant time save, so you would want to use them. But they function identical to gun shoes. So if you're not going insanely fast, you might just get more value out of another pair of gun shoes because the cooldown will already be back up. But they're a nice item. I buy some of those sometimes, but I won't need it here. Lightfoot Potions are an upgraded version of Swiftness Potions. These are debatably useful after you hit level 40. I usually buy at least 5 of them, but I maybe only use like 1 every so often in a speedrun. If I really need to like get out of combat quickly, I pop a Lightfoot Potion, I book it, and then the moment I'm out of combat, I mount up, and then the speed boost doesn't matter. So Lightfoot Potions are not as useful as Swiftness Potions because you can't use them until level 40, whereas Swiftness Potions benefit you while you still have slow ground mount speeds, and that's when you're going to get the most benefit out of a speed increase on foot. So that's why these are better. And they're also much cheaper. Lightfoots are pretty expensive, so for a pretty expensive niche item, I would not recommend it for the average person. Then swim speed potions are not used in the Horde route, but you could either use a swim speed potion or a shimmer scale diving suit specifically for Alliance leveling in Red Ridge Mountains. There is about like 1 minute total of time that you're spent swimming in the water as an Alliance character. And because Red Ridge is usually routed in at the start, it's probably best to have one of these. Now, if you have a sea turtle mount, you can also use the sea turtle mount, but there are going to be situations where you have to interact with objects, and then that will force you to dismount. So a shimmer scale diving suit, for instance, will give you the same amount of movement speed as a sea turtle, but you don't have to like remount and dismount and stuff to get that benefit. So for specifically Alliance players who plan on using Red Ridge Mountains, I would recommend getting at least 1 shimmer scale diving suit, maybe 1 or 2 speed potions, or swim speed potions specifically. Horde players, if you're following my route, you will never need to use that. Then I guess you have the super niche stuff that I would very, very rarely ever recommend unless you were actually doing speedruns. So you have stuff like weapon oils or weight stones. There's like the weight stones and then sharpening stones. At low levels, absolutely never get them. The cost of getting those low level versions is insane for the value they provide. It's not efficient at all. I went ahead and bought some Legion or BC gems here. I think these are either BC or Wrath gems. I normally wouldn't recommend them, but the price was actually pretty low in the auction house. They're usually much more expensive. I would, generally speaking, not buy them, though, unless they happen to be dirt cheap, like I found them. In that case, if you have something like a Garrosh Heirloom, or you manage to get, like, a socketed ring, a crafted ring, right? These can be a good investment. You'll see me use them in my speedruns, but they are a very, very minor increase, obviously, like, +6 crit total. It's not bad. It's obviously a significant amount right now, but it's gonna fall off pretty hard. And you have to remember that stat increases and stuff like that is much less valuable the later on in a speedrun you go, and they matter more, I guess, the later on in a speedrun. So you're gonna get less value when it actually matters the most. So you want to basically rely on stat increases and stuff like flasks, as I mentioned, in the later levels when it's actually going to count. So maybe you can invest in some of these gems because you'll only be able to use them at the later levels. Now, other stuff, Spires of Iraq, that is no longer in the actual official world record route, but a lot of people still do it because it's a very good zone. There are some consumable items that you can get. I forget the names of all of them, but you can look into it. There's a building that you can construct in Spires that gives you access to a vendor, which sells you these unique consumables, which give you buffs while in the zone. They can be traded. So I will basically, before speedrun, if I plan on doing spires, farm a bunch of these consumables and then have one of each for my character. So the moment I enter spires, I have all these cool buffs. This is not really a time, or not really a money commitment. It's a time commitment. You have to sit there and just refresh the vendor every 10 minutes to get the item you want. The actual price, if you do that, is super cheap, but it's a lot of time that needs to be spent to actually end up getting all the items. This is up to you. I mean, if you're sitting there watching Netflix and you have nothing else to do and you're like, hey, I'm going to level a character through spires, maybe it's something you could consider. And then other stuff would be like drums, right? I could buy drums, but I don't really care that much. And if you're a class that has a lust attached to it, this is obviously not something you need to buy. You could buy like a Battle Shout scroll or like an Arcane Intellect scroll, that kind of thing. It's an option. Electroshock Mount Motivator is another thing that could be useful. It's not the greatest item. I've honestly stopped using it, but I still keep one in most speedruns just in case I feel like I need it. And I think that's kind of it. There's some other things, like, for instance, Legion Lockpicks. That one is useful, but it can be kind of pricey. I've demonstrated it in my previous budget speedrun. I'll probably be doing it again here, but it's also important to remember that the moment the Moss Skip gets implemented in 9.1.5, this will no longer be useful. This will not be something you need to worry about at all. And then, of course, we have all the Dark Moon items, which the Dark Moon quest items are very, very useful if Dark Moon Fair is up. I would say pick and choose your pricing on these. Some can be a few thousand gold, some are a few hundred gold. So maybe go and grab all the ones that are like 100 to 500 gold. Turn those in, you get a free chunk of experience, you get tickets, which you can use to buy top hats, which save time, because then you don't have to run back to get the XP buff. That's pretty good. When I do, or if I eventually do a budget speedrun with Dark Moon Fair active, I will probably end up using some of these. Dark Moon Fair does start in, I think, 1 day, right? So, yeah, maybe for the second half of the speedrun, I'll look into some of these. And then you can actually mail over Dark Moon tickets for the carousel before starting your run. That saves a little bit of time. You don't have to interact with the vendor to actually get them. But yeah, that's honestly about it. As you can see, I've gotten a list with all of those detailed items that I just described, and you really don't need to use, like, most of them. A lot of them save very minimal amounts of time. The vast majority of your time save is going to come from this here. You're also going to get a decent amount of time save from investing in heirlooms, but like I said, that is kind of a decision that you can make if you want. The heirloom enchants do save a decent amount of time, but one of the biggest things about them is because they are so cost effective, the time save ends up being worth it. But in terms of investment that you have to make on each character, obviously flying is the biggest one, but then this stuff here. This is what you want to buy. Bear Tartar, Goblin Gliders, Gun Shoes, and some Speed Potions. And just bigger bags so you don't need to constantly sit there and clean out your inventory, and you can just do it all in one fell swoop. Pretty much covers everything. Now, as mentioned already, I'm going to be live streaming this in, pretty much like a minute or two after this video ends. I'll, schedule the recording and stuff like that. But anyways, I can rant for a while, and I do need to start preparing, because right now it is 5 a.m., and I am streaming in 6 hours. Yeah, 6 hours. Okay, I almost thought I was bad at math there for a second. So I'll be streaming in 6 hours, which means I still have a lot of prep to do, because I need to edit this video, get the thumbnail prepped, all that fun stuff. It's going to be a lot of work, but it should be fun. Alright, thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the stream.